When God enters the battle, victory is guaranteed. Now, let me remind you of something powerful, something that you may already know deep in your soul. There is no battle, no storm, no challenge, no trial, no situation, no circumstance that is too great for the divine power that moves within you. When God steps in, everything changes. We often face struggles in life that seem insurmountable. We find ourselves standing in the middle of challenges, questioning our ability to overcome. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, to feel like we're drowning in the weight of what's in front of us. But let me tell you something. This battle is not yours alone. It never has been. There's a higher power, a source of strength beyond measure that steps in when we need it most. And when God enters the battle, it's not about what we can do in our own strength. It's about what He can do through us. The victory is already secured. Imagine for a moment you're standing at the edge of what feels like an impossible situation. You're looking at what seems like an insurmountable wall. Your heart may race and fear may try to creep in, but listen closely. The moment you turn to God, the moment you release your need to control and simply trust, something miraculous happens. God doesn't just walk beside you, He walks ahead of you. He's the one clearing the path, creating opportunities, shifting the very atmosphere around you to align with His divine plan for your life. When God steps into the battle, the odds are no longer stacked against you. Victory is already on the other side. The outcome is no longer in question. You are on the winning side. You see, this isn't just about the big battles we face. This is about the daily battles, the internal ones, the ones nobody sees, the doubts, the fears, the insecurities that try to hold us back. God is not only with you in the grand moments of life, but in the quiet, unseen ones too. When you allow Him to be the anchor in your life, you can weather any storm, but you have to surrender. You have to let go of the need to control. Sometimes the battle doesn't look like a victory when you're in the middle of it. It looks like a struggle. It feels heavy. But remember, when God enters the battle, even the struggle has purpose. Even the pain has meaning. And when it's all said and done, you'll look back and realize that the battle was not a battle at all. It was a path to something greater. So today, I want to encourage you, no matter what you're facing, no matter how difficult it seems, know this: when God enters the battle, victory is guaranteed. You are more than a conqueror. You are destined to triumph. It may not come in the form you expect, but it will come, and it will be beautiful. Stand firm in your faith. Trust in God's timing. Hold your head high, knowing that you are not fighting this battle alone. The victory is already yours. Your breakthrough is on the way. And when the dust settles, you will stand victorious, stronger, wiser, and more confident in the power of the God who never leaves your side. When God's presence enters your battle, it transforms the very nature of the struggle. You are no longer facing it alone, and the outcome is no longer determined by your strength or your resources. It is no longer just your effort against the odds. The moment God steps in, everything changes, and what seemed impossible becomes not just possible, but certain. There is something incredibly powerful about the divine intervention that occurs when God enters your battle. It's not merely a matter of adding strength to your efforts. It's a radical shift in how the battle unfolds. This shift comes from the recognition that God's presence is not just a comforting thought, but a tangible force that affects every aspect of the battle. The challenges we face in life often feel insurmountable. We see the magnitude of what's before us, and our hearts may sink under the weight of it. Fear whispers in our ears. Doubts begin to creep into our minds, and we wonder whether we are strong enough, smart enough, or prepared enough to face the battle ahead. But the moment God enters that battle, fear loses its grip. The doubts that once seemed so powerful begin to lose their strength. In that moment, it's not your fear or your doubt that determines the outcome. It's the mighty power of God. It's not the scale of your problem that determines the victory. It's the scale of God's power that you may be standing at the edge of a storm, watching the waves crash around you, thinking there's no way out. You might feel alone, overwhelmed by what you face, but let me remind you, when God enters the battle, you are never alone. God does not stand idly by while you struggle. His presence is not just a passive assurance, it's an active, transformative force that shifts the very ground beneath your feet. When God steps into the fight, your enemy is not just facing you. They are facing the creator of the universe. They are facing the one who spoke the world into existence, who has no rival, no equal. They are facing the one who holds all power in his hand. That's the difference. When God enters the battle, it's no longer about the size of the enemy, the strength of the opposition, or the resources you have at your disposal. It's about God's ability to accomplish what he has promised. His presence does not merely encourage you, it empowers you. It's like having a champion by your side. Someone who doesn't just cheer you on, but someone who leads the charge, who fights the battle for you. When God steps in, it's a game changer. The odds no longer matter. The challenges that once seemed so large are suddenly reduced to their rightful size in the presence of God's power. But here's the beautiful thing. God doesn't just enter the battle to give you a boost. He enters it to take control. It's his authority that brings victory, not yours. It's his wisdom, his strategy, his perfect plan that determines the outcome. You might be facing a battle that feels like it's beyond your control, but the truth is it was never in your control to begin with. When we try to fight our battles alone, we exhaust ourselves. Try to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. But when we surrender and allow God to take the lead, the battle is no longer something we fight with our limited strength. It's a battle that is fought with infinite power, wisdom, and grace. The beauty of God's presence in our battle is that it doesn't depend on our understanding. We don't need to know how the battle will end or even how to win it. All we need to do is trust that God knows exactly what he's doing. The outcome is guaranteed, not because we have all the answers, but because he does. God's ability to bring victory is not hindered by our limitations, our mistakes, or even our lack of understanding. His power is not contingent upon our perfection. It's not about us at all. It's about him. You don't have to see the full picture to know that victory is coming. When God enters the battle, he sees what you cannot see. He knows what you do not know. He understands the larger plan, the divine purpose that is unfolding, even when you're in the middle of the storm. And when you trust him to lead, you can rest in the assurance that he is working all things together for your good. It's not your fight to win. It's his fight. And when God fights, the victory is always his. And if he is fighting for you, it is already yours as well. In the midst of the battle, it can be easy to lose sight of the bigger picture. We become focused on the immediate challenges, the obstacles right in front of us. We become consumed by the difficulty of the situation, by the weight of the struggle. But God's presence invites us to look beyond the immediate moment. When we trust in his plan, we're able to see the battle from his perspective. We are able to see that there is a greater purpose at work, even in the struggle. The battle is not just about the victory at the end, it's about the transformation that happens along the way. God's presence in our battles is not just about the outcome. It's also about what we learn, how we grow, and how we become more aligned with His will. As He enters our struggles, He shapes us, refines us, and builds in us a faith that is unshakable. He prepares us for greater victories ahead. We might not understand why certain battles come into our lives, but we can trust that each one is part of God's perfect plan. And when we surrender to His will, we can be sure that the outcome will always be greater than we could have imagined. The truth is, the battles we face in life are not ours to fight alone. When we try to do it all on our own, we miss out on the strength and wisdom that God is offering us. But when we allow Him to enter the battle, we unlock the power of the Creator, the one who holds the world in His hands, and who has already won the ultimate victory. With God in our corner, victory is not just a possibility, it is a guarantee. So when the battle feels overwhelming, when the odds seem stacked against you, remember this: when God enters the battle, victory is not just possible, it is certain. Trust Him to lead and know that victory is already on the horizon. Let me know if you'd like any revisions. Victory is not about your strength, but God's power working through you. This is one of the most liberating truths you can hold on to when you face life's battles. So often we are conditioned to believe that success, victory, and overcoming obstacles are entirely within our control. We push ourselves to our limits, thinking that it's our abilities, our intelligence, our strength, and our endurance that will make all the difference. And while those qualities are important, they are never the ultimate deciding factor in the outcome of our battles. There is something far greater at play, God's power working through us. That's what makes all the difference. When you're up against a challenge, especially one that feels too big, too overwhelming, or too difficult, it's easy to feel inadequate. You might look at the obstacles before you and think, I don't have what it takes to overcome this. You may even feel like giving up, believing that the task at hand is beyond your capacity. But in those moments, it's important to remember that victory is not about you alone. It's not about what you can do in your own strength, but about what God can do through you. His power is greater than anything you can muster on your own. It is infinite, unshakable, and all-encompassing. And when you rely on that power, victory becomes not only possible, but inevitable. When you face a battle, whether it's a personal struggle, a professional challenge, or even an emotional battle, it's easy to become overwhelmed by the size of it. The weight of the problem can seem insurmountable, and you might think that you're not equipped to handle it. But when you recognize that you are not fighting in your own strength, something incredible happens. You stop focusing on what you lack and start to tap into what is available to you. You become a vessel for God's strength, His wisdom, His courage, and His ability to overcome. And that changes everything. In our own strength, we are limited. We can only do so much, and eventually we reach a breaking point. But with God's power working through us, there is no limit. There is no challenge too big, no obstacle too great, no enemy too strong. God's power knows no bounds. It is the same power that parted the Red Sea, that raised the dead, that healed the sick, and that brought forth miracles throughout history. And that power is available to you right now, working in and through your life. Imagine for a moment that you are standing in the midst of a battle with all the odds against you. Maybe it's a financial struggle or a health crisis or a relationship that feels like it's falling apart. You might look at the situation and think, I can't do this on my own. But that's the point. You don't have to. When God is working through you, you have access to an unlimited source of strength, wisdom, victory. It's like being connected to an endless well that will never run dry. God's power is not just something that helps you get by. It's something that propels you forward. It empowers you to overcome, to rise above, and to achieve what you once thought was impossible. One of the most important things to understand is that relying on God's power is not about passivity or inaction. It's not about sitting back and waiting for God to do everything for you. Rather, it's about aligning yourself with His will and allowing His strength to guide your actions. You still need to show up, still need to do your part, but the difference is that you are no longer relying solely on your own abilities. You are trusting in something far greater, and that trust unlocks the door to victory. When God's power works through you, it doesn't just impact the external circumstances. It changes you on the inside. You become more courageous, more confident, more resilient. The obstacles that once seemed impossible to overcome become stepping stones. And you start to see them for what they truly are, opportunities for God to display His greatness. You may not have the answers, the resources, or the strength to face the battle on your own, but God's power is enough to fill in those gaps. It's enough to carry you through the hardest of time. Victory is about learning to lean into that power, to trust in it completely, and to allow it to lead you to the outcome that God has already prepared for you. It's about recognizing that the battle is not yours alone, but that God is fighting with you, for you, and through you. His power is what gives you the strength to keep going when you feel like quitting. It's what gives you the wisdom to make the right decisions, even when the road ahead is unclear. It's what gives you the courage to stand firm, knowing that you are not fighting on your own. There is a certain peace that comes when you understand that victory is not about your strength, but about God's. It's a peace that comes from knowing that you are not the one carrying the weight of the battle. It's a peace that comes from trusting that God will equip you with everything you need, that He will provide the strength, the wisdom, and the courage to face whatever comes your way. And it's a peace that allows you to rest in the assurance that the victory is already secured, not by your efforts, but by God's power. Victory is not about your strength, because your strength is limited. It's about God's limitless power working through you. It's about recognizing that you are never in this alone. Even when you feel weak, even when you feel like giving up, God's strength is more than enough to carry you through. And when you rely on that power, victory is no longer a matter of if, it becomes a matter of when. So the next time you face a battle, don't focus on your own strength. Don't measure your ability against the challenge before you. Instead, turn to God. Trust in His power to work through you. Lean into His strength, His wisdom, and His guidance. And know that when you rely on God's power, victory is not just possible. Let me know if you'd like any revisions. God doesn't just stand beside you, He goes before you, clearing the path. This is a truth that can change the way we approach every challenge in life. We often see our struggles as isolated incidents, battles we must fight on our own. We look at the obstacles in front of us and think that we must navigate through them by our own strength and wisdom. But the moment we realize that God is not only with us, but also ahead of us, everything changes. This understanding shifts our perspective from feeling like we are alone in the fight to knowing that we are being guided, supported, and led by the Creator Himself. We all face moments in life when we feel uncertain about the road ahead. Whether it's in our careers, relationships, health, or personal dreams, we come to points where we don't know what step to take next. It's easy to become anxious or overwhelmed when we can't see the way forward. But the beautiful truth is that God doesn't just show up to walk beside us through these moments. He is already ahead of us, preparing the way, making sure that the obstacles we face are not there to defeat us, but to strengthen us. He is clearing the path, working behind the scenes in ways we may not always see, but always know are happening. Imagine for a moment that you are standing at a crossroads, unsure of which direction to take. The choices seem daunting, and the consequences of each decision feel immense. It's easy to be paralyzed by fear, to hesitate, wondering if you're making the right choice. But in that moment, you can take comfort in knowing that God is not just standing beside you offering advice. He is already ahead of you, preparing the way for your success. He's gone before you, and he's already seen the road you're about to walk. The obstacles that may seem like a challenge to you have already been handled by his divine plan. He's already opened doors for you, and he's already orchestrated the perfect timing for your breakthrough. When we realize that God goes before us, we begin to see that we don't have to figure everything out on our own. We don't have to carry the weight of every decision, every outcome, or every possibility. God is already at work. He has already cleared the path ahead of us, smoothing out the rough spots, removing the stumbling blocks, and ensuring that what we need will be there when we arrive. The weight of our concerns can be lifted because we know that the God who created the universe is actively working on our behalf. There is an incredible sense of peace that comes from knowing that God is ahead of you, preparing the way. It's not about hoping that things will work out or wishing that everything will fall into place. It's about knowing with certainty that God has already made the way, and he has made it with your best interests at heart. Even when things don't go according to plan, we can trust that God's plan is greater, and he is leading us to something better. Every challenge, every detour, every difficulty is part of his preparation for our future. Even in moments of uncertainty, we can rest in the assurance that God has already cleared the path. This knowledge doesn't just bring peace, it also brings confidence. When we know that God is ahead of us, we can move forward with faith even when we don't see the whole picture. We can take that first step, trusting that God has already gone before us and has made the way clear. There's a certain courage that comes from this understanding. We don't have to wait for the perfect circumstances or for all the obstacles to be removed. We can move forward knowing that God has already handled what we can't see, and he is guiding our every step. Sometimes we get so caught up in the details of the present moment that we forget to trust in God's bigger plan. We look at the challenges in front of us and become focused on the obstacles themselves, feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of the task. But God wants us to lift our eyes from the present difficulty and trust that he has already worked things out. He has already prepared the way. This doesn't mean that there won't be hard moments or obstacles along the way, but it means that we can trust that God is not surprised by any of it. He is already ahead, making the way straight, smoothing out the path, and ensuring that we have what we need to overcome. God's plan is always greater than our own. He sees the bigger picture, the full scope of what's happening in our lives. He knows the twists and turns before we even come upon them. And he has gone ahead to prepare for those moments, to ensure that we have the strength, wisdom, and resources we need. The journey may not always look the way we expect, but God's purpose is being worked out every step of the way. When we allow ourselves to trust that he is going before us, we can approach life's challenges with a sense of peace, knowing that we are not alone and that the path ahead has already been prepared. One of the most powerful aspects of God going before us is the way it transforms our approach to obstacles. When we know that God has already handled what lies ahead, we can face each challenge with confidence. The mountain before us doesn't seem as daunting because we know that God has already made a way through it. The storm we are walking through becomes less frightening because we know that God has already calmed it. We are able to see beyond the difficulty, beyond the temporary discomfort, because we trust that God has already prepared a way to victory. It's easy to get lost in the difficulties of life and become overwhelmed by the weight of it all. But when we remind ourselves that God goes before us, we can find peace and courage. We can rest in the knowledge that He has already seen our future and He is working to ensure that we reach it. Every step we take, He is ahead of us, clearing the path and preparing the way. We can take that step with faith, knowing that God is not only with us, but also ahead of us, making sure that the journey we are on leads to victory. The next time you find yourself at a crossroads unsure of which way to go, remember this: God is not only beside you, but ahead of you. He has already cleared the path for you, making the way smooth and straight. All you need to do is trust, take the next step, and know that God is guiding you toward a future that is already secure in His hands. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments. There are moments in life when you feel like you are facing an insurmountable battle. The weight of the world seems to be on your shoulders, and you wonder how you will ever overcome the obstacles before you. You may feel alone, abandoned, or even forgotten. But in those moments, it's crucial to remember that you are never alone. God is with you, and He is ready to enter the battle on your behalf. When God enters the battle, victory is guaranteed, and nothing can stand in His way. This truth is the foundation of your faith, and it's a truth that has the power to transform your life. It is easy to become discouraged when we face struggles. We look at our circumstances and feel powerless, thinking that the problem is too big for us to handle. We may even feel as though we are fighting a losing battle, believing that victory is out of reach. But the truth is that victory is never out of reach when God is on your side. God is not limited by the same things that limit us. He does not see obstacles the way we do. To Him, there is no battle too big, no challenge too great, no enemy too strong. When God steps into the fight, everything changes. The battle is no longer yours alone. It is His. And with God in control, victory is guaranteed. It's easy to focus on the magnitude of the challenge you're facing. You might think that your problems are too great, that the odds are stacked against you, or that the battle ahead is impossible to win. But when God enters the picture, all of those concerns fade into the background. God's power is greater than any obstacle, greater than any enemy, and greater than any fear. His power is unlimited, and His ability to conquer is unparalleled. No matter how big your struggle may seem, God is bigger. No matter how many enemies you face, God is greater. And when He steps into the fight, you can be certain that victory will follow. The key to understanding this truth is recognizing that God is not just present in our lives, He is actively involved. He is not a passive observer standing on the sidelines while we fight our battles alone. God is a warrior, and He fights on behalf of His people. In the Bible, we see countless examples of God stepping into battles and bringing victory to his people. Whether it was the Israelites standing at the edge of the Red Sea facing an army that was far stronger than they were, or David facing the giant Goliath with nothing but a slingshot, God showed up and fought for them. In every situation when God entered the battle, the outcome was certain: victory. This doesn't mean that we won't face difficulties. It doesn't mean that the battle will be easy or that the road ahead will be without challenges. But it does mean that we are not facing the battle alone. God is with us, and he is ready to fight for us. When we place our trust in him, we can stand firm knowing that victory is already assured. We don't have to fight in our own strength or rely on our own abilities. Instead, we can rely on God's power, knowing that he is the ultimate source of strength and victory. In our human nature, we often try to fight our battles alone. We rely on our own wisdom, our own resources, and our own strength. We think that if we just try hard enough, we can win the battle on our own. But the truth is that we are limited, we are weak, and our strength will always fail us at some point. But God's strength is limitless, his wisdom is boundless, and his resources are infinite. When we allow God to fight on our behalf, we tap into a power that is beyond our understanding. We stop relying on our own abilities and start trusting in God's perfect ability to bring about victory. Victory, when God enters the battle, is not just about the outcome. It's about the transformation that happens in us during the process. When we allow God to take control of the battle, we begin to change. We become more courageous, more resilient, and more confident in his power. The battles we face become opportunities for us to grow in our faith, to deepen our relationship with God, and to witness his miraculous power at work in our lives. Even in the midst of the struggle, we begin to see that God is using the battle to refine us, to strengthen us, and to prepare us for what lies ahead. In moments of struggle, it is easy to feel defeated, to think that the battle is too much for us to handle. But God's promise is clear. He is with us, and he will never leave us. When God enters the battle, victory is guaranteed, not because of our own strength, but because of his. We may not always see the outcome right away, and we may not always understand the process, but we can trust that God is at work. His ways are higher than our ways, and his timing is perfect. Even when we can't see it, God is moving on our behalf, preparing the way for our victory. The most powerful thing we can do in the midst of a battle is to surrender to God's will and allow him to take control. This is not about giving up or abandoning our efforts, but about recognizing that we cannot fight this battle alone. We must surrender our fears, our doubts, and our weaknesses to God, trusting that he will fight on our behalf. When we surrender to him, we open the door for his power to flow freely into our life. We allow him to lead us, guide us, and fight for us. In every battle, there will be moments of uncertainty, moments when we question whether we can go on, moments when the struggle seems too much to bear. But in those moments, we can hold on to the truth that victory is guaranteed when God is in the fight. He will not fail us. He will not abandon us. He is with us every step of the way, and his power is greater than anything we face. When God enters the battle, there is nothing that can stand in his way. Victory is assured, and we can trust that he will bring us through to the other side. So the next time you find yourself in the midst of a battle, remember this. When God enters the fight, victory is not just a possibility, it is a certainty. No matter what you are facing, no matter how difficult the battle may seem, God is already at work on your behalf. When God enters the battle, victory is no longer a distant hope. It becomes a certainty. This truth changes everything about how we approach life's struggles and challenges. It shifts our focus from our limitations to the unlimited power of God. As we face obstacles, trials, and seemingly insurmountable difficulties, we often find ourselves consumed by fear, anxiety, and doubt. We look at our problems and wonder how we will ever overcome them. But when we realize that God is actively involved in our lives, working on our behalf, we begin to see that victory is not just possible, it's inevitable. Too often we focus on our weaknesses, the things we cannot control, and the obstacles that stand in our way. It's natural to feel overwhelmed when we're faced with adversity. We see ourselves as small and fragile, and the problems in front of us seem larger than life. But when God enters the battle, everything changes. He does not see our struggles the way we do. To God, there is no challenge too big, no problem too difficult, no enemy too powerful. He has already won the victory, and He invites us to step into that victory with Him. One of the most powerful truths we can hold on to in life is the understanding that God is always with us. He does not leave us to fight our battles alone. He doesn't stand on the sidelines watching us struggle from a distance. God is actively engaged in our lives, working to bring us victory. He is the one who goes before us, preparing the way, and He is the one who walks beside us, offering His strength and guidance. When we realize that God is with us in every battle, it changes how we approach each challenge. We no longer fight with our own strength. We fight with the power of God Himself. The Bible is full of stories of God entering the battle on behalf of His people. Whether it was the Israelites at the Red Sea, David facing Goliath, or the disciples in the storm on the sea, God's intervention brought about miraculous victories. In each of these stories, God demonstrated His power and faithfulness, proving that when He is present in the battle, victory is certain. These stories remind us that we are never alone in our struggles. Just as God fought for His people in the past, He is fighting for us today. The same God who parted the Red Sea, who defeated giants and who calmed the storm, is the same God who is with us in our battles. His power has not diminished, and His willingness to fight for us has not changed. When we face challenges, it's easy to become discouraged and lose hope. We look at the size of our problems and wonder how we can possibly overcome them. But when we invite God into the battle, we change the equation. Our strength is not enough to defeat every obstacle, but God's strength is more than sufficient. His power is greater than anything we will ever face. This is the foundation of our faith, that God is greater than our problems, and He is always working on our behalf. The battle may seem daunting, but we are never fighting alone. God is with us, and when He enters the fight, victory is assured. One of the most important aspects of God's involvement in our battles is His perfect timing. We often want things to be resolved quickly, and when they aren't, we become frustrated and anxious. We question why things aren't changing or why the outcome isn't what we expected. But God's timing is always perfect. He knows what we need and when we need it. He is never late and He is never early. He is always right on time. His timing allows us to grow, to develop patience, and to trust in Him more fully. When we allow God to fight our battles, we learn to trust not only in His power, but also in His perfect timing. His plan is always better than ours, and when we surrender to His will, we can rest assured that He is working everything out for our good. Another crucial aspect of God's involvement in the battle is His ability to turn our struggles into something good. It's easy to look at our problems and feel defeated, as if the struggle is pointless or meaningless. But God has a way of taking the very things that seem to be working against us and using them for our benefit. He takes the pain, the hardship, and the challenges, and He uses them to shape us, to grow our character, and to prepare us for the future He has in store. In Romans 8:28, we are reminded that God works all things together for the good of those who love Him. Even in the midst of the struggle, we can trust that God is using it to bring about something greater. What the enemy intends for harm, God will use for good. In every battle, there is a lesson to be learned. We may not always understand why we are going through certain struggles, but we can trust that God is using them to strengthen our faith and to build our character. The struggles we face are not wasted. They are part of God's plan to bring us to a place of greater strength, wisdom, and understanding. When we allow God to enter the battle, we give Him the opportunity to teach us, refine us, and make us stronger. The victory is not just in the outcome, but in the transformation that happens within us as we walk through the battle with God by our side. Victory in the battle is not always about the circumstances changing in the way we expect. Sometimes the victory is found in our ability to trust God, even when things don't go according to plan. It's found in our ability to surrender our fears, our doubts, and our desire for control to God. Victory is found in the peace that comes from knowing that we are not fighting alone, that God is with us, and that He will see us through to the other side. Even when we don't understand what's happening or why, we can trust that God is at work and that victory is already secured. In every battle, we have a choice. We can either fight on our own, relying on our own strength and wisdom, or we can invite God into the battle and allow Him to fight for us. The first option leads to exhaustion, frustration, and defeat. The second option leads to peace, victory, and transformation. When God enters the battle, we can rest in the knowledge that the battle is not ours to fight alone. He is with us, and when He is with us, victory is guaranteed. We may not always understand the process, but we can trust in the outcome. God is always faithful, and when we invite Him into the fight, we can be confident that victory will follow.